So, Diana, so nice to be with you on ETW, which is Empower the World Talks. And you're going to share with us some like 5 tips or 5 powerful ideas or questions around how to deal with life's biggest challenges, because you've certainly been through some pretty epic ones already in your life. So welcome. So nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to be able to share sort of what I've learned through my experiences, with the hopes that it might help other people who are not necessarily just going through cancer, but any kind of challenges that they're currently being faced with.
Absolutely. So did you want to just give us a little summary of some of the journey and the story of your life so far?
Sure. So just to go back a little bit, I was pretty much living life in a fast lane, like any of us, really. I was at a point in my life, I had finished school, I had graduated, I had a steady job, I was able to take some vacation. I actually took a leave of absence from work, went traveling the world. I felt like I was invincible, that I could do anything, and I kind of landed my dream job through that process as well, which was to go and work abroad. So I was in the process of packing my bags. I had given up my apartment, ready to leave to move to Spain to work. And a month prior, before I was leaving, I ended up in the emergency room and I got the diagnosis of having ovarian cancer.
Okay.
So that kind of just threw everything out of path for me. It really sort of it was a curveball that hit me, and at first it was a lot of denial, just because of the shock of it. I couldn't comprehend that I was going through this, given I was always a healthy person. I was an athlete. I was on the varsity track and field team. I was eating well, so it just didn't make sense to me that I would get this kind of diagnosis with regards to my health. And so I went down that path where I had immediate surgery and they did the chemotherapy, and things were going well for a few months, and then the cancer came back. So I had a reoccurrence at that point, and I had to go back in chemotherapy, this time a lot more aggressively. Again, the outcome was very uncertain at this point. So it was at that point that I kind of had to be real with myself and admit that, this could not end well for me at this point. And is this really sort of what my life, how it ends? I was 33 years old when I was diagnosed. So I was at a point in my life where I was just building my career, and I was looking to start a family, and you get hit with this curveball that completely throws everything to the side. So now I'm still fairly recently out of this journey. It's only been a year since my chemotherapy, so I'm under very close supervision with regards to the cancer coming back. So, there's certain things that I've learned along the way here that I wanted to discuss. Were 5 of the things that I didn't know about cancer recovery that have sort of shifted my life even after this experience, because there's this misconception that you go through this, but people see you after and they look at you and they say, oh, you're healed now, you're good, you're ready to go back to your life. But that's not the reality of it. And it's important for me to share these points, because it's things that I didn't know about, and I'm realizing that more and more adolescents and young adults are being diagnosed with cancer, or severe illnesses that are affecting them in their prime. And it's unfortunate, but this is sort of the reality of today. And it'd be good to sort of have those tools going into it, to see, okay, well, how can I cope in these situations when things don't necessarily go as planned for you, because that's the
Yeah,
reality of life.
and I'd love to add as well, I was thinking about this, and I know some of your posts recently about some of the things you've been going through, like the after effects of cancer, 2-time cancer. And yeah, it really hit me as well that until we've been through something like this, we don't really think about, we hear so many stories from people close to us or friends of friends, but we don't really think about the after effects like you've been discussing as well. So it's really kind of opened my eyes up to, like, it's a very, very important discussion for us to know, even if we haven't been through it ourselves, right?
I think it's important because even the doctors, their focus, the oncologist, is really to get the can fix, like, get rid of the cancer. Once you get rid of the
Yeah.
cancer, you're kind of left on your own to figure the rest out. So that's where the challenges come. And, the first thing that I noticed was really in terms of mental health. And,
Right.
when you're going through that journey, for me, and again, it could be different for other people, is that, you're in survival mode at that point. So you're not really processing what is happening. You're just so focused on getting through that day and getting through that treatment and making it to the next step. But it's after you've done all those treatments that you take a moment and everything starts to hit you from a psychological aspect. So in terms of
Right.
anxiety sets in, depression sets in, post-traumatic stress symptoms too. Like I didn't realize that was something that I would have to cope with. But there's anxiety surrounding certain dates that you were diagnosed, or you go for scans and you relive those. You have nightmares, you wake up with panic attacks, and nobody prepares you for what's to come after that. And you don't
Yeah.
know how long that's going to last. It could last a lifetime. So mental health stuff is really crucial, especially in today's day and age. I know a lot of young people are suffering from mental health. I had issues even before cancer when it came to anxiety and depression. So,
Right.
to go
Right.
through an event that kind of throws you off can just amplify that and make it even worse.
Did you find it's a constant battle, like a weekly battle, a daily battle through what you're going through right now? What are the main kind of things that come up for you every week going through this recovery?
Good question. I would say it's probably a daily battle. Now, would I
Mhm.
say that I get stuck in that phase all day? No, I think it's little bits and pieces that come throughout the day. I've just sort of
Yeah.
learned to sort of train myself to not snap out of it, but to move past it, to develop those tools that can get me to, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now, understand where it's coming from, and that way I can move past that and go on with my day. But a lot of the anxiety, I would say, comes from the fear of reoccurrence. Is definitely one that is in the back of my mind, that is there. What if this, what if that? It's basically, I've realized that it's living in fear, right? And the question that I
Yep.
had to ask myself is, well, do I really want to live in fear, or do I want to live my life to the maximum capacity that I can every day? Because right now I'm feeling good. I'm out there. Like, is there a point for me to stress about things that may happen if they haven't happened? So that's
Yep.
one of the ways that I try to talk myself when I'm having those moments where I'm feeling anxious. Because of that, I really go back to my thoughts and what am I feeding myself? What am I telling myself in those moments is what's going to change it. And the
Could
depression
you?
comes from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just had an interesting thought of with the fear. So I think, like many of us, I don't think that fear in anything that, or anytime you're pushing out the comfort zone, and especially what you've gone through, the fear potentially is not going to just suddenly go away forever. But it's like, how do you find the balance, or work out how to still live an incredibly, like right now, like I remember when I first met you, then your energy was unbelievable and you were out there to help other people. Like, you're pushing through the fear very, very clearly. So how do you stop the fear kind of closing you back up, and how do you push through it like you're doing? I know it's a
That's a
roller
great
coaster,
question.
but
It's not easy, and it's still sometimes difficult for me as well too. But I think it goes back down to changing my belief system. It was really
right.
how I was talking to myself and what I believed in. So at the beginning, I was putting so much faith in what the doctors were saying, and if you go see an oncologist, like, you're not going to leave feeling good regardless. So
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to sort of keep that in mind and be like, okay, they're going based on statistics. They're giving me the information that they have, but I'm more than a statistic. I have
Yeah.
certain, I took put my control back in a sense to be like, there's certain things that I can control in my outside environment. I can control what's within. So the better I become at controlling what's within, which is my thoughts and my actions and my beliefs, then the outside environment won't impact me as much. So that's sort of how I grounded myself, and also the sense of purpose. So for me, like, going through this, it definitely was it was a wake up call. It was unfortunate that I had to hit rock bottom in order to get that wake up call, but it
Yeah.
made me realize that life is precious, and it can be very short. You don't know how much time you have here. So what is it that you want to do with the time that you have? Do you want to be a victim of your circumstances, or do you want to use that and help people. Like for me, it was really about serving and using sort of my experience to be able to share that knowledge with people to help them through their journey as
Yeah.
well. And it's that whole vision and that purpose and that dream that sort of I had to go back, because like you said, at a certain age, you kind of lose your purpose or your dreams. You go down this path where you're in the rat race, and you're
Yeah.
doing what you think you should be doing, but you're not doing what you want to do. So it's really sort of refocusing on, okay, but what do I really want internally for myself? And that's what's going to drive you. It's your, why am I doing this? It's your
Yeah.
why. So that's what really pushed me. For
That's
me,
so
it's
cool.
important. And I know, and the one thing I want to mention too, because I know a lot of people feel guilt, especially cancer survivors, after they've gone through this journey where,
Right.
they've lived it for so long and they just want to go back to a normal life, which is completely understandable. So there's that level of guilt of, oh, I should be helping, but I'm not. So,
Yeah.
you follow your path. For me, it's about serving, and that's where I feel fulfilled. But I also
Yeah.
recognize that for some people, that might just drain them even more, and they need to go back to the other things that drive them. So I think it's really important to connect with yourself and know, like you were saying, it's, are you doing it
Yeah.
because this is sort of what's expected, or is it because it's what you really want to do? So it's getting real with yourself and asking yourself those questions about, okay, well, what do I want to do with the time that I have here? If this was my last day, what would I be
Yeah.
doing with that day? I think it's really going
Yeah.
back
That is
to
huge.
asking.
That's so powerful. Like, yeah, absolutely powerful. Like, I remember doing some exercises before where, like, it sounds kind of morbid, but it's not. It's actually extremely powerful. Where you take yourself to the end of your life, whenever imaginary that would be, and you ask yourself, like, what would you do then, taking that position, looking back on now, like, what would you do in the now? What would your old
Mhm.
self, or however much time we have, right? What would they advise us to do now? Because it's extremely powerful.
That's a great
Diana, this is
exercise. Yep.
this is amazing. Was there any other key points you wanted to kind of share with
Yes.
us?
Uh, That so mental health was the first one. The second one that I want to talk about, again, because my focus is on mostly adolescents and young adults that are going through this journey, and something that I've had to deal with is fertility issues. Because again, that's not
Right.
something that you hear about someone who's going through cancer. A lot of times, cancer is associated with a disease like the old age, right? But more and more
Yeah.
younger people are being diagnosed, and again, it's at a period in your life where you're trying to build that family, and you think you have all the time in the world, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you don't. And there's a lot of people, a lot of women, especially when they go through the surgery, and they go through such an invasive surgery that that option is completely removed from them. And
Right.
if it's not, then you're going through certain treatments such as chemotherapy that really can damage those sort of hormones and those organs in your body that make it difficult for you to be able to have a child. So, a year post chemotherapy, I've realized that, you go through this whole testing period to determine, like, is this still an option for you or not? And not only is it hard on your body because they give you so many hormones in order to be able to go through these processes, but the cost associated to it as well is, you were off work for 2 years trying to survive basically an illness, and then suddenly, you want this option to be open for you, yet, you have to come up with the funds for it. So, my heart goes
Right.
out to a lot of people in this situation, because not everybody has insurance, not everybody has those means, and you don't know, you don't plan for this again, and then suddenly you're
Yeah.
struck by another sort of earthquake that comes after the whole cancer journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really like like I was saying earlier, like just knowing some of these things, I never would have even thought about a lot of these things before, when I haven't been through the journey or had someone really really close to me go through it. So I think it's really important for us to be aware of all of these factors. And how is there any way that people can help support you, or anything we can do?
I think it's really just about sharing the information. I think
Right.
that's the most important thing, is just to be aware that
Yeah.
these are possible outcomes, and to prepare for it in the event, because I've had to ask myself some difficult questions after the fact. about like, how badly do I want to go through this? Like, there's certain anxieties surrounding that too, because it's like, I don't want to necessarily bring a child and then be sick myself again. So there's a
Right,
whole
right. Yeah,
other slew of questions that come with that.
yeah,
But you want to be able to ask yourselves these questions beforehand. If this is really something that's important for you, then maybe it's good as a precaution just to get the facts so that you can make a decision at that point.
yeah.
And I think that's the message that I want to share with most of the younger people is that, this is not something you can take for granted. It's something that, you need to plan for financially and emotionally as well. If it's something that you really want in your life, then plan for it. So the other point that also I've realized after talking to several people that have not necessarily just gone through cancer, but other life situations that have really affected them is survivor's guilt. So I didn't even know this was a thing until I sort of started talking to my cancer coach, and she was like, it's very common for people to have a feeling of guilt when they've gone through a situation where they were close to death and they survived that, right? It's like anybody who goes through like a tragic accident and they survive, there's that survivor's guilt. But it's very common for people who go through cancer as well, because as soon as you get diagnosed with cancer, you go through, it's a marathon, right? So throughout that period, you meet so many other people that are also on that same journey as you. And the reality is that not everybody sort of makes it. And when you make it to the other side of it, it's, you often question yourself, well, why am I here? Why didn't this person make it? And that's something that comes and goes on pretty much fairly frequently at the beginning, especially. I like I said, like I'm fairly recent out of my journey through that. So I'm starting to feel these emotions. So I don't know if they last forever, but right now it's definitely a reality that a lot of cancer survivors do go through. It's a phase that is very common apparently. And it's not just, survivor's guilt in terms of why did I make it? It's also guilt surrounding, you know, when it comes to fertility, for example, the guilt of passing on that gene. Will I pass on that gene to my child? There's that fear surrounding it. And in different aspects as well too, the guilt of, like I was mentioning before too, in terms of like not being able to support or give back or serve as much as I should. Like, do I feel guilty because I
Yeah.
can't do that? So there's a lot of guilt also when you do actually come out of that you have to deal with as you sort of progress in life as well. So that was another aspect of it. The other one I want to talk about was shattered dreams. So again, this goes back to wanting to build a family. Suddenly you've had this image your whole life of what it was to be your ideal family, and that's sort of taken away from you. Your career as well, like you were at your prime, and then suddenly you get hit by this. You're out of the workplace for 2 years. The reality is that everybody else sort of moves on. The world continues. So,
Yeah.
people that you've worked with, they've moved on to, they've got promotions, they moved on to different jobs, yet you feel like you've been left behind and you have to go back and catch up to that. So a lot of opportunities are lost there as well. And, if you're a single woman that's going through that, it's not just your dreams, it's your partner's dream in a way too, because, if you can't have a child suddenly and your partner had this dream of like, well, I want to have my own child, it's like, well, suddenly you're both going down this path. So a lot of things to consider, that it's not just necessarily affecting you, it's affecting your whole sort of environment as well. That you don't realize at the time, but the impact can be it kind of has like a domino effect there, that it can really sort of affect multiple layers of people in your surrounding. And the final point that I wanted to mention was cancer rehab. So again, this is something that nobody tells you about. As soon as you're cured of cancer, you're sent home and you're like, okay, you're good. But the reality is that there's so many damages from the treatments that you've gone through. So one thing that I had to do was really seek out treatments on my own, whether it was physiotherapy, massage therapy, acupuncturist, naturopath, all those holistic alternatives that really make a difference. I had to seek that because at one point I had nerve damage. I couldn't use my hands anymore, or, like I couldn't walk properly, but that's no longer an issue for them because they've healed you, but you're no longer the same person that you were before. So you are stuck in a way, figuring out how it is that you're going to rebuild your life without necessarily knowing where to go. So
Yeah.
again, I think these are all things that really are key points that I didn't know at the time that I wish I did know. But again, if it can help somebody else, then I'm happy to share this,
Yeah.
and hopefully it enlightens the situation a bit about life after cancer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Diana.
You're
So
welcome. Thank
yeah.
you so much for having me.
Oh, of course, of course. Do you want to just share, like, are people available to reach out to you, like, if they have any questions or they're even going through something like this? Like, how can people get hold of you?
Absolutely. Facebook, they can reach me, Diana Ash. That's where I'm most active, if not by email as well, diana.ash09@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to help out.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you,
We are
Dave.
done.
This is wonderful.